Next, we have Johannes Friedrich, who leads the climate data team at World Resources Institute. With his interdisciplinary background in sustainable development, Johannes plays a pivotal role at the World Resources Institute's data strategy related to climate, energy, and systems change. He's been a visionary in creating innovative data products that support governments in the private sector in driving equitable global systems change. Collaborates with decision makers at various levels, including the UN, national level governments, corporations, and investors. Today, Johannes will share his expertise on the critical role of data in addressing climate challenges and fostering sustainability.
Hello, I'm joining you from the World Resources Institute, where I'm also working on the Systems Change Lab, which is why this is also on the slide here. I tried to come up with a nice, catchy title for this that people can remember, and then I think I just noticed like a couple of days later that I was probably unconsciously influenced by my favorite dance song, Turn Down for What? And then it's like, still good. Not everyone might be familiar with this. I'm working at the World Resources Institute, which is call ourselves a global environmental think and do tank. So we're non-profit, but work a lot of on data products as well, and a lot on open data. A little bit as a context, we try to be very like practical driven in trying to drive outcomes, not only like doing research out there, but really thinking about how research and data can actually influence like systems or change. In the end, we have a bunch of data products out there. The things that I want to talk about here, particular, is things that we've learned. Like we're trying to do something that actually just like changes decision, moves the needle, and there's many things that we've learned that work and don't work. And we thought this is like it's good to share this with the community here. I only have like 5 slides, so it should be manageable. And most of them are pictures, so I'm going to take my notes out because the pictures give me less of an indication of what I need to say and that I don't forget anything. So I wanted to share a little bit of the, like, and this is a little bit of my subjective experience kind of things. There's lots of things that need to happen with data, and a lot of the other pieces you might be a little bit more familiar with, which is like it needs to be reliable, it needs to be timely, granular enough, it needs to be open and transparent and all of these things. But there's particular other things that we've experienced, as particularly if we put out data products, as well as like these, we often build these type of tools, which you will see some of them, on certain other things that are actually really important, that are kind of often, when you come from a data perspective and a research perspective, you might not think about. And those are like the 3 things. One is data for what? Why do you actually need that product? Who's the users? Who you're trying to influence it? Have you actually checked if they actually need the data? The second piece is who. Are you actually the right organization to do this? Or should you work, for example, with a grid operator or something, or like ensure like common ownership, and who you're trying to serve? And the third one is data actually enough? Which in often cases people like often think if we just put out more granular data or this thing is out there, everyone will use it. And often that's not the case. So I'm going to go through a couple of examples of things, just like things that we found in these type of areas. So starting with the data for what? We often, when we worked on these type of projects, you might have heard of like concepts like use cases or something, or users. You're trying to lay out, oh, this is going to be these utility companies or this like government or something. Often what happens is that people say policymakers will use it. I actually just like advocated in my organization for that we strike like policymakers is not a term you're allowed to use, or decision makers, because they're actually not people, like at least not specific people. I'd like who do you actually mean by this? So being very specific, and then also testing this. Not only assuming that in some case, of course, if you have very good contacts already, and this goes to the second point, with some of your end users, you might actually be pretty sure already that they actually need it. But in most cases, people start out new projects, do like make a concept and saying, let's push out this data, and it's going to be inform policymakers kind of things. But you really have to make sure that you're being very specific with this, and saying and confirming this, actually talking to people. So this is one of the examples that I have, which is the Systems Change Lab. I'm not going to go too much into details on these tools. They're all open source and free, so you can just go on the website. I'm not offended if you put your phone out. Which is a platform that shows you what kind of systems transition, and systems transition is much more broader than like energy systems. It goes like from even governance and equity systems and other financial systems need to happen, and how can you actually track this? When we pushed out this platform, which is pretty well received, we actually, even before we published it, we talked to about 400 people. We just like tried to interview a wide range. And these are not only the experts and the people like work on the topic, but actually a lot of the end users. This is, for example, something where we really try to target financial institutions, private sector, philanthropy, private investors, multilateral development banks, and others. And we just said, well, if we really think they're going to use this, let's just talk to them. So we talked to 100 of them and then really refined what they actually need even before we published anything. I know this is not possible all the time, particularly in the type of like research areas that you work, but I think it's an important thing to keep in mind, to be critical enough about the work that you're doing to say don't just say, if we have this data out here, it will solve the problem, or the people will come and automatically use it. Another good example of this is actually a project that we've done, also collaborated with Duke and many other organizations, and is the power plant database, which is this top one that you can see. It's like 30,000 different utility scale power generators, which you can openly access and download. If anyone is interested to moving this forward, it's actually currently not being updated, but it's all open source, so anyone can pick it up. As well as the lower part, which is based on the power plant database, we collaborated to publish an open data set of all the solar, utility scale solar based on remote sensing. And one of the things that we've really found, which is a second piece around like who actually needs the data, which is when we started this power plant database, people were telling us, why are you trying to do a power plant database? EIA already has all of this data out there. And this is like, that's true, but only in the United States. Anything outside of the United States is a mess, it's not standardized, and who are the people who actually like need that data like most urgently, because the US has a lot of capacity, they have a lot of data, they have a lot of expertise, are actually countries that might not actually have that expertise and might actually want to use kind of the same methods, the same planning, and all the experience that some of the higher income countries have, and actually want to do the similar type of work. So the specific value add that we were saying here is actually for whom, particularly for countries that might actually lack this type of information, where the standardized open information is, for example, not available. And this goes both for like the power plant as well as these remote sensing thing, where like AI and remote sensing is actually quite beneficial, because you could say we could use the power plant database in the US data and other things that was already there as training data to then actually scale it into countries that might have a lot less of this data available, basically. So this is just another example of things like thinking about who your users are, in particular, who might need the data actually more than kind of like the typical pretty high capacity folks that you already have. So this is this point. The next point is around, are you the right ones to actually build it? Who should actually do this work? We've seen quite often that people are just like excited to build like new products, put new things out there. In many cases, it's good to really think, one is who should have ownership about this. This is, for example, some of these projects that I heard here, I'm pretty excited about, because they seem to be really developed in close collaboration with the end user, for example. If you think a utility will use this data, a utility ideally should be involved in this project, or even one step further, should maybe even own this project, and you actually just supporting them on key aspects that they have full ownership around this. As a second point, you also make sure in this case, and this is another project that I've done, to make sure what's actually out there, and is this something that is actually new, or is there something where you say, oh, there's been actually a lot of other work that has been done, can we actually collaborate with some of these existing efforts, or are we actually adding value here? This is map that I've done actually just as a side project, which is like some of my most interesting things are just as like little side projects I'm doing, which came out of a data community, Climate Action Data 2.0, where we've actually seen that several organizations have done these kind of overviews of being like, what are all this is climate data platforms that are cross-country usually, so it's mostly not the US ones, because US ones people are a lot more aware of, so we are focused a lot on the things that means like, which are the platforms that are actually focus most of the globe, or particularly in countries where data is usually lacking, for example, and created this overview of a lot of the existing platforms to just be like, and this is kind of just like, it was a side project. It wasn't like a huge effort, but the main message for us was, because I'm constantly hearing like, we need to do this tool, we need to do this data set, and I'm always being just like, in many cases I'm being like, I know at least like 5 other organizations that are already doing this kind of work. Like, have you talked to them? And that goes both for like, obviously you as a research community, as well as some of this where, if you want to read the blog, also advocate a lot in being just like the organizations that actually plan or fund this type of research, and basically being just like, don't make sure that you know what's actually happening and connect to the existing effort, instead of saying like, we need to start something from scratch, and then you suddenly become, this is kind of like the things that you might know, which is like, the people are saying there's like 42 standards for like energy data out there, basically, and we should have one standard, and then it creates a standard. Now there's 43 standards for energy data. So we've seen that these type of connections are super important, and actually can get you often much further, because there's already lots of experience, as well as if you do these type of collaborations, partnership, you make sure that you add value, actually. You're not doing something that someone else has done, as well as actually build on a pretty wide existing community already. Because what I've seen with a lot of these type of projects and organizations out there is that a lot of them are actually really excited to collaborate. Another interesting example, which I kind of hope that something comes of this, is regarding what data is out there. So one of the efforts that we've been doing, for example, with the folks from Our World in Data, which you might be familiar with, is you might have heard about a small organization called the International Energy Agency, IEA, and might have tried to access their data and might have seen that most of this is behind paywall. We've been trying to push them quite a bit to actually say, this is like, there is a lot of data already out there. Again, like, being just like, they should be doing a lot of the work, which is great, but if most of the world can't access the data, because for many of you it might be just like, let's ask the university, and they pay for the data access, most people around the world can't do this if it's behind a paywall. So we've been trying to push them to hopefully, if things go well, maybe this year, maybe next year, something, you see a little CC, Creative Commons thing pop up on IEA website, and we'll see if that actually works. But yeah, I'm gonna be cheersing if this actually happens. This is a couple of examples. And the last point making is data actually enough? The one thing that I like to say around this is data is, in most cases, necessary but not sufficient. Like, data has to be is the basis for a lot of the things, for a lot of like the decision making that you need to make, for like a lot of the policy planning that we are involved in when you set like climate targets or look at your energy system priorities kind of things. A lot of the things that we're doing is a little bit more high level than like the granular local energy planning that we're doing. But what we've seen a lot is that data is absolutely necessary. It's necessary to build the trust to make informed decisions. But in most cases, it actually doesn't get a lot of people, particularly if you're trying to influence people. It might be like, it's often good to confirm this. Again, like, I love these collaborations with the utility companies and so on, because you can already confirm, like, if we create this data, will they make the decision? And then it means like, yes, they will, because they're already involved. And then you can say, okay, let's create the data. In most cases, it's not that easy. It's like there's ingrained interest. There's, in many cases, what we've seen, just lack of knowledge, particularly because you often come from like a very research-based, people know their data. If you just throw them, like, if you colleagues that you have in the room, if you throw them a big data set, that means like, oh yeah, I can pull out what I need. In most cases, what we've seen, people just don't know some of the very basic things. So one of the projects that I've been overseeing for like 10 years at WRI is called Climate Watch. Again, you can open up you can Google Climate Watch and see it. We publish global comprehensive open data sets on greenhouse gas emissions by every country in the world, by sector and by gas, as well as countries' climate targets in their so-called nationally determined contributions, the countries' climate documents, basically, and their long-term strategies and their net zero commitments to really bring transparency to the space. And we are obviously doing this that everyone else can access it, but we're also trying to do this to actually inform countries when they are setting their own climate targets, to actually know, just as like, here's what other countries are doing, what should we do? And this is an example of being just this like, based on the measurement on how many countries we have actually informed and setting their national climate targets and cite us, and how many government ministries actually access our data and download our data, it's been pretty successful. But the reason for this is that we moved from spending a lot of our time on data, now spending around 50% of our whole team's time just on engagement and training. We just work with people. Because we're doing a training every single month. And there's 100 to 200 people like joining every single month on these virtual trainings. Even if you think like, we're gonna tell you the same thing over and over again, but there's still people joining, because most people are lacking even some of the basic things. They're being just this like, oh, it's a nice accessible tools. To really like get people there, that they can use it for their processes and informing what they like trying to change, you need to work a lot more with people. And this is one example. There's obviously other things like political interest and other things. There's a question how much you can influence this with research, but keep in mind that data often is necessary but not sufficient. So that's kind of my quick overview. And I have my quick 3 slide summary. In summary, data what for? Who should do it? And is it actually enough? So thank you so much.